topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. It's Tuesday morning, and as you all know, I love Tuesday mornings because I get to connect with you. And what can be more powerful than that? So, what I want to share with you today is something beautiful that I saw. So currently, I'm in New York visiting family and business. So it's both a mix of business and pleasure. And what was interesting was I was at Chelsea, New York City, and we were visiting. There's gym and there are different areas, just kind of observing. And what I saw was so beautiful. They have a children's gym around that area, and kids are going to play in the gym. And a little, probably 2-year-old fell down, and there was another kid in front of her, probably 4 or 5 years old. And he is going with his parents, she's going with her parents. And what was beautiful was that he turned around and helped her up. So as we talk about the kindness circle, it's so important to observe other people and learn from them. And I was so impressed by that young child that he didn't even think twice, and he extended his hand to pull the girl up even before the parents could get to her. So take a moment in that time, daily busy time that you have, and find some time for somebody else and keep that kindness circle going. And I want to thank each and every one of you who have got our books, especially Expert to Influencer and the Entrepreneur's Garden, because not only it's going to help you become the influencer that will impact others, it's also going to help you build those solid relationships with yourself, with money, with results, with people, so that you can live the life you want and you deserve. And remember, partial profits from the book sales go to entrepreneurs across the world. And being an entrepreneur, I am partial to entrepreneurs. So let's keep that going, and let's bring in our guest. Welcome, Tim.
Good morning. Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. So usually we start out with a question in childhood. Do you recall a moment, whether it was an event, a person, or a thing, anything that might have happened that you remember even to this day?
I do, and I'm not sure why I remember these things, but I actually was reminded of this with the story that you started the show with today, with the little kid who turned around to help the other little kid. It's really, it's quite a touching story. And I recall something like that happening to me. I'm not sure how old I was. Could have been close to the same age at the range. And I remember something very similar. And this actually, I won't get into the weeds with the story, but I'll remember I did get hurt. And my cousin came over, and my father was holding me, and my cousin, who was 2 years younger than me, offered me a lollipop, the color lollipop that I wanted. And I thought, now, why would I remember that? I don't know. It's a seemingly meaningless story, but it's that just small echo of kindness that you mentioned. For whatever reason, I remember it my whole life, and that was a heck of a long time ago. So
Yeah,
corny though it may be, it sticks with me.
it does. And it's amazing. As Maya Angelou used to say, people remember how others make you feel. And that this is such a perfect example that in that moment you wanted that lollipop of that color, and he offered that to you. And those actions, a lot of people get so caught up in like, oh, I gotta buy, the exact gift, and I gotta do this and I gotta do that. It's the gesture that counts.
And Maya Angelou was absolutely right. That's what's going to stick with somebody for sure.
Yeah. So as you grew up, did you have any specific interest?
I'm
You know,
sorry.
how little children think of, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be a firefighter, I'm going to be a cop. So,
I was always a very innovative little kid, and I
mm,
was always putting on little shows for my family, and they were very encouraging of this too. And I actually did start doing some of that stuff through college, and then after I got married and have my own kids, and we would do that. We would put together this little show called Bees, Trees, and Me, as a matter of fact. And it was just real good, wholesome, wonderful. My mantra was, if little kids can appreciate nature and song, they can appreciate life in general. And I guess, again, it sounds a little corny, but that's been a quest of mine. And if I could just mention, I have 4 grown kids. Today is my oldest one's birthday. And I'm thinking how blessed I am to have mostly considerate children. That was always so important to me. Will they help other people? And, not to say you got to help other people, but do they have that kindness gene or something like that? And I think
oh,
they do.
that's fantastic. Happy birthday to your oldest one.
Her name's Elizabeth. I'll pass it on.
Oh, so happy birthday, Elizabeth. And I'm sure our listeners will join in wishing her happy birthday. So as you grow, and you mentioned about that, you were very innovative. So what kind of shows were those?
They were mostly silly songs, and they were about nature. And I've always had a tie-in, a connection to the outdoors. Like, it's a beautiful spring day here on Long Island, and it's still a little chilly, but I'm optimistic. And these shows really tied together the outside and trees and animals. I've always had a thing for animals and an affinity. And again, pass that on to my own children. And I can't help but think that I pass that on in my workshops and seminars too, because I think business people in general, sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. We think, we've got to be stuffy and hard nosed, and we don't. We can take it light and really just appreciate those simple things in life.
Yeah, absolutely. What you're sharing is so true. And to me, when a child is creative, there's nothing silly about it. And I'm so glad that your family encouraged you to keep on going on that journey, because creativity is one of the things that we try to squeeze out of people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And creativity and curiosity helps us create innovation. So as you grew up, which direction did your life take?
I was not sure what I wanted to do, but my first jobs had to do with customer service. And I know, a lot of people say, well, customer service is important. And I think I really believe it and believed it more than other people. So when I was working in a deli, when I was working in a department store, I always kind of gravitated toward working with people and being a salesperson, and then actually spent most of my life in the retail industry, had a few businesses of my own, and worked in department stores, both big and small. And actually have a sort of a consulting gig the past few years in the local out here on Long Island, the pumpkin farms, the wineries, the breweries. And I think to myself, why do I do that? And it really is that Disney-esque almost, uh, people making people happy, and which makes me happy too. It's just I really believe that that's what makes the world go round. And
Mm, absolutely. At the end of the day, what do we remember? You can have gone through and made ton of achievements and all of that. Yes, you can have tons of awards, certifications, accomplishments. At the end of the day, you remember, how did you feel? And that's going back to the beginning of our conversation today, Jim. So you mentioned that you've been in retail whole of your life, and now, we are in such a blend where people are coming back and yet moving away from retail. So what do you see the future?
well, retail has certainly changed as you're alluding to. There's no question about that. And retail spaces in the local outlet mall out here on Long Island are being reused for many different things. But I'll just go back to a quick story on like the in the pumpkin farming business. And what that means is, in the fall, thousands of people come out to the North Fork of Long Island and, for their big day of pumpkin picking. And it's called agritainment, as you know, and I call it edutainment as well. So I think it's a different kind of retail. We spend a lot of time on our devices, and I love the technology. I think it's wonderful. I remember the days without technology. I love what we have. At the same time, speaking from my own perspective, my own kids, and also dealing with lots of customers, families are still looking for the same thing. They're looking for reasonably priced, a day in the country, uh, wonderful experiences that will make them feel good. It all goes back to that wonderful quote from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, experiential businesses are thriving because people get tired. Yes, you love technology, you can get those experiences, but there's nothing like feeling that fresh air and having that actual touch and feel. So, as we are talking about, yes, I love going to pumpkin farms and especially Halloween, going to maze, but there's so much goes behind that. There are so many people working behind the scenes. And of course, as you talk about, there can be several different problems in workplaces. So, can you share with us few of the workspace problems that you have observed?
Yeah, there's I think a lot of the problems are similar. I'd like to call them challenges or opportunities, just to put it in a different spin light. But people are the same, I believe. And for instance, in this particular business that we're chatting about now, and many, many small businesses, there's starting salary, minimum wage in some cases. And a lot of people ask about motivation. How the heck do you motivate people? And I believe that you really can't motivate people. We, as managers and owners, can create an atmosphere where hopefully people can motivate themselves. And by helping them answer the question for themselves, WIIFM, like what's in it for me? What am I really going to get out of working here? And I can't expect as a manager or a owner or a consultant, I can't expect uh, starting range people to say, hot dog, I'm going to get out there and, take care of people and feel good. That's not their motivation. So it's a much simpler thing. It's a few bucks actually, but it's more than that. It's how is this going to help you in your life? We're really teaching you skills here that you're going to be able to take with you and transfer to bigger and better jobs. And to, again, that's just part of trying to create this atmosphere that's positive and people are considerate. All goes back to our conversation from the beginning. How do you make somebody feel? And when employees feel good about each other too, I think that can go a long way.
Absolutely. And you definitely made a point there that, what you can do is create that environment and also give them the training and also provide that value for them over that few dollars. And now what happens is that, yes, they can provide, but then there are some sticky situations, as you always talk about. So tell us about few sticky situations that you've encountered and how you've helped people overcome those.
Well, thanks for asking. I'm going to go to what I call the granddaddy of sticky people issues, if you don't mind. And
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
the prickly one is the personal odor problem. And the way that most managers deal with this is that they don't deal with it. They really hesitate, they procrastinate, they wait for it to go away, they wait for a review time. They might think, wow, maybe I should ask somebody else to handle this. They hope the employee leaves. But that is not the way to handle it from what I have found and gathered over the years. So the I saw a lot of ways that it didn't work and came up with this formula called PHP. It sounds corny, sounds Pollyannish, but it is very potent actually. It stands for purity, humility, and patience. And I thought, well, what has gone into effective decisions where the outcome really came out pretty good? And I came down to these things. So purity means purity of intentions. We talk till about integrity till the sun goes down, but we really have to be pure of heart and have the intention that we really, give a flying fish that we want this to work for our company, for the employee, for everybody. Humility is a big one. Uh, Confidence is important, but not egotism. And there's a lot of managers that go into things like this and try to be a tough guy, and it just does not work. And the patience means patience with the employee and with ourselves. Do you mind if I take it through this
Yeah,
formula?
please. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Here's a quick scenario. Say it's a person, say it's a young person. Let's really paint the scenario. And his name is Roger. And it could just as easily be Helen or whomever, meaning that when we're using this formula, genders don't matter. And I know people talk about, well, they have to be comfortable and all that stuff. If you have people's best intentions at heart, I believe that this formula works all the time. It's never not worked from what I've seen it and used it. So if Roger has an odor problem, to get him pretty quickly, don't let it fester and say, Roger, I'm not even sure how to begin this conversation, but it's come to my attention that you have an odor problem. And I want you to know, Roger, that not everybody's talking about this. It's not being gossiped all over the place. I would want somebody to tell me if it were me, and I'm not sure what we're going to do about it, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. And it's as simple as that. Now, there's a couple things that happened here. One, there's an adage in management that says, never let them see you sweat. Well, I believe you should let them see you sweat a little bit. Let them in a little bit. Roger, I'm not sure how to start this conversation. And if I did, I might not be human. And you want to let him know or her know that everybody's not talking about this, because that's what happens a lot. People, gossip about things like this. You want to nip it in the bud, as we say. And then the patience is, you don't have the solution as the manager. You're bringing it to their attention. And I have found, Divya, that 90% of the time, at least, it is an awareness thing. They really don't, they're not aware that they're bothering anybody with this. And then the patience is just waiting and patient with yourself, because you've done the right thing, even though as a manager, you might not think you did. And then the patience with them, give them a little bit of time to fix their own issue. It's almost sounds too simple, but these ingredients make it very, very effective from what I've seen and taught people.
Well, I love how you broke it down. First is that I don't know how to approach this conversation. So it shows the human side, the humility side of a manager, that they are uncomfortable. And as you said, that, let them see you sweat. And what happens is that it really sets the stage for the conversation that's to come, because now you have employees' full attention that, what is it that's coming that my manager is not comfortable talking about? And what happens is that when you're bringing it to the awareness, like you said, nobody wants to have a bad breath. Nobody wants to be smelly. Because I still remember one of my colleagues during my ex-corporate days, there was a person who used to smell, and people would call the gentleman Smelly Nelly. And he had no clues like what was going on. People would just kind of like, excuse themselves in the conversation during conversations. And this person, like you said, that people think it will go away. And in the meetings, it was just interesting. Nobody would bring that up. And
Right.
what you're sharing is so important, that nobody wants to be that person. Nobody wants to be that smelly Nelly, or be called names, or have people gossip about them. So it's simple and yet very effective.
Yeah.
Have you seen any other issues when it comes to, besides odor, in terms of the employees?
Yeah. There's a lot of them. If I could just comment on one thing that you said, if you don't mind. You said it gets their attention after you've established humility. And I've never heard it put like that. You're absolutely on the money there. And I just wanted to mention that. So the other issues, there are alcohol related issues that
Mm,
come up. I mean, that also is about a smell, but it's also behavior, slurring of words and things like that. That's a pretty common one, as a lot of our fellow entrepreneurs know, unfortunately, and something that is very tricky to deal with. And there was one case in point, if you don't mind me sharing a story, that in the retail business, there was an employee who came back from lunch slurring her words and reeking of what alcohol. And
mhm,
people were telling me, I was the manager at the time, and people were telling me, Tim, you got to fire her. You can't tolerate this behavior. The security people were telling me that. The other managers were telling me that, and the some of the customers even said, that this is, I don't shop here to look at this, even though I think it's kind of a show, and people inherently like things like that. But so I didn't know what to do, Divya, and I was young, had a management degree, figured I should know how to deal with this. But I'm thinking to myself in my heart of hearts, man, I don't know what to do. And so what we did, we took her off the sales floor. She was really like, throwing the F bomb around and really yelling, and
mm,
so out of character for this employee. And we took her to an office, and I asked a male and female security people to take her home, drive her home. I called her emergency contact, which was her sister, and the sister wasn't surprised, and she said to me, "Thank you for calling. No explanation. I'll take it from here." I said, "Okay." Day goes by. People are asking me, "Tim, what are you going to do?" My boss 2 days later is saying, "You got to do, what are you going to do? You got to make
mm.
a decision here." 3 days later, the third morning, she shows up at my door, my office door. And she said to me very calmly and succinctly, "I'm sorry. I have a diabetic condition. It exhibits itself like I'm intoxicated. I don't drink at all." She said, "I can control it. I did not that day with medication. It won't happen again. I'm very sorry. I hope I can come back." And I thought to myself, had I not had I jumped at this decision and not really used my own pure intentions of good intentions, my own humility, like, what the heck do I do here? And patience, of course. We took her back. She came back. She went on to be promoted in this company. And I keep thinking to myself, what if I had jumped and listened to other people? The book cover says, your inner sense. We don't have the right decisions, but our inner sense does. The forward writer for Solving Sticky People Problems, Barbara Luttrell, who left us a few years ago, she was the editor of Working Woman and Working Mother magazine, and she said, it's a shortcut to management sanity. Like, it can really help us make decisions when we don't know what the heck to do. So that definitely is a story that stands out in my mind as well.
Well, that's a very powerful story because so many times we make assumptions and we assume that people are who they are as it appears on the surface. And so many times what appears on surface, as they say in iceberg theory, is that what you're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. And there is so much more beneath the surface that if you come to the table with curiosity and openness, you can figure it out. And power to you, as you mentioned that, she went ahead and got promoted. And this brings a story to my mind about one of my clients. So one of my clients had come to me and said that he had a very problem employee, would not deliver the work, and my client was very, very strong leader in the sense that not a manager. He was not a person who would manage her. He was a person who had tried to accommodate everything. Like, she had ADHD and figuring things out, providing everything, and this person would just not perform. And this had gone. So when he came to me, he had done whatever he could have done. And he said that I'm ready to put her on PIP, which is performance improvement plan. And yet I feel that there's something, as you mentioned about inner sense, there's something I'm missing over here. So we sat down, we talked, and as we were going through our coaching, he came to the realization that he would just sit down and talk to her face to face before he put her on the PIP, performance improvement plan, and just tell her like exactly what was going on without making it official.
Right.
So he sat her down and said that, listen, this is what we have been doing for past several months, where I've been giving you opportunities after opportunities. It seems that you're not ready to take it on. And now I just want to kind of give you a heads up so it does not come to you as a surprise that you will be going on performance improvement plan. And she just broke down and howled and said that her husband was going through a terminal cancer and she just could not afford because the layoffs were happening. And she was thinking if she took the family leave to take care of her husband, she might get laid off. And it was not that she didn't want to perform, it was that she couldn't. So he sat down and talked with HR and got her that FMLA. Sadly, her husband passed, but she was able to give time to him and have him spend time with his family. And then she came back so much stronger because she had faith in him. That, again, it goes back to the purity of intentions. And turns out that she has jumped 2 promotions.
Mm.
He has left the company and they're still in touch. So it goes long ways to what you're talking about.
That's an incredible story on so many levels. There's a quote, I can't credit it, I forget where. If we knew what was going on in the minds and hearts of other people, we would never criticize. We really don't know. That story that you shared, that's really a perfect application in my mind of purity, humility, and patience, as you inferred. The humility really can go a long way. I love that story. I think that's terrific. That's a success story, big time.
Oh, thank you. And so we have talked about some of these problems. What are some of the other problems that you have seen between managers and employees?
So when I'm at a trade show, oftentimes people will come up to my table and say, "Hey, Tim, do you have a seminar on teamwork?" And I do. And the I worked for SkillPath and Dun& Bradstreet, traveling across the country doing seminars. And I will tell you that one of the biggest things that would come up in the seminars, this is no surprise to you, I'm sure, is, teamwork. How can my people work together better? And they're really not so much wanting teams to work productively. They want people to get along, is what they're saying. And CEOs, there was just something released here locally, Long Island Business News perhaps, that said something to the effect that CEOs know that newly minted college graduates are very good at technology, wonderful at it, but lack a couple things. One is what they call playing nicely in the sandbox, getting along, and critical thinking. So when I'm teaching college courses, management courses, I often will ask questions, and I'll tell the students, please ask questions too. You mentioned this in your in the story that you just shared. Just ask questions. The person who is asking questions is in control of the situation, and that's good control. If you have people's best interest at heart, you want to have control of yourself and the situation, not to be controlling, but just to have it go, have it flow well. So teamwork, people getting along, I think is probably one of the biggest challenges in the workplace. And sometimes the problems are caused by bosses like us trying to force people to work together and like each other almost. And I could digress quite a bit here. We sometimes we have mixers and icebreakers, and people don't feel all that comfortable in a lot of those situations. We almost try too hard as managers. I do some work with a guy who used to run a big part of Disney. His name is Lee Cockrell, and he has rule number 39. Managers don't try too hard. Let things flow. Ask people questions. Be patient with people. Don't pretend like you have all the answers, because we don't. And again, that's where the humility comes seeping right back in. That over and over again, I keep feeling that great word from the beginning of the show. How do you feel? We want to feel good as managers. We want to feel like we're doing the best for our people. So whether it's delegation, motivation, scheduling, teamwork, which is working together better, this formula, I believe, this feeling, this way of living can be applied to any situation. And if I could just add, I've found an incredible similarity among raising children, being a dad, being a grandfather, teaching students, taking care of customers, and managing employees. It's communication, respect kind of thing, or something that it really helps us feel good about life and not be looking over our shoulders, who's trying to get us, and just keep doing the next best right thing.
Very powerful. Let's flip the situation a little bit. So many times what happens is that bosses have favorites, and there can be this employee who is doing everything right, but just doesn't get noticed by their bosses. Any tips for them?
This is the number one on the top list that you hit it hard. Favoritism, one of the biggest complaints. So we want to talk about from the employee standpoint, what can they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Managers, two things that employees want of managers: they want fairness and consistency. And so oftentimes managers, being the human inherent condition is that we do have favorites, and we don't want to show that, but many managers do. There's no question about it. So what does an employee do or a student? There's a lot of students that say, I was always the kid that the teachers never liked, which is terrible. And some other students say, yeah, I was always the one that, I was the teacher's pet. The teachers love me. So that's not a feather in the cap of the teacher or the manager. But what do we do when we're favored or not favored? And I think the it's a really valid question that you're asking. It's a tough question too, because it makes one go inside themselves and really reflect, why are we giving this vibe that we're not favored? And I'll go back to rule number 39. Sometimes we try too hard. We have names for people like that. Don't be a kiss up, and don't be an apple polisher, etc. And I believe that. I think that's valid advice. Don't try too hard. At the same time, try to be useful and helpful. And these are two different words, meaning we can be helpful or friendly, I should say, friendly, like in customer service. If we're in a job where we're taking care of customers or serving other employees, we can be friendly, and a lot of us are, but we're not helpful and useful enough. And what that means is, my advice to the employee who maybe is not favored and they would like to be, is to be useful. And what does that mean? That means emerge, think like a manager. What really needs to be done? What's a crummy job maybe that people don't want to do that has to be done? Maybe think about doing that and immediately employ this PHP concept, which is maybe to the manager say, even to have this conversation. This is a tough conversation to have with your manager, but boss, I feel like sometimes you don't like me, and maybe you favor some of the other people. That alone is going to stop that boss in their tracks, and they're going to go, oh, no, that's not the case. And even if that employee says, okay, no, I'm just saying, boss, if there's anything that I can do to do better, please let me know, because I want to be a good boy here. And then the employee can stop talking. I can almost guarantee that boss is really going to think about that conversation, and it might truly change the relationship, because most people don't talk to their bosses like that, and they don't ask for that kind of real helpful, advice. How can I do a better job here? So again, at the risk of oversimplification, most people don't do this. And that's why it seems like, wow, this is out of left field.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What happens is that there is a little bit of resistance. I'm doing better than the other people. I've got more experience. And why is the other person getting more attention? So when you're coming into that conversation, it's more about defending yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes what also happens is that it can come across as blame, and people's walls go up when they experience blame, and especially, and as you mentioned, that's the reality of life. If they're your boss, okay, I am your boss, I'm the manager, and you're telling me what to do, versus the approach you're saying that is, this is what I feel, and what could I do better?
Right.
And the willingness to do even the crummy jobs that needs to be done, and bringing that humility. And I'm sure, a lot of our listeners will not agree with it. And here's what I'm going to share with you, listeners, is that what we share here are perspectives. There's no right or wrong. You have to see what's your situation, what your thing is. In most cases, these principles are applicable, but at the end, it's your discretion and what's most pertinent to your situation and your problem. So tell us, if you were to summarize one or two things that our listeners could walk away with, what might that be?
Is to, and you alluded to a lot of these things already, to definitely be open-minded to this. As a student, I didn't learn any of this in college. I even tried. I used to ask questions of the professors, like, well, how do you, and they couldn't answer the question. And then I started working part-time jobs, and I would ask the managers, how do you do this when this comes up? I asked a lot of questions. And then I started teaching, and I thought, well, the instruction manuals, they got to have these prickly issue situations. Wasn't there. And then I started working for the seminar companies, Dun& Bradstreet, all good material, but I couldn't find it in there. And I thought, well, what really has helped me answer these questions? And I came up with my own stuff, like what for me felt right. So when you said, when you mentioned to the listeners, if this really doesn't feel right, then don't do it. We got to make our own good time. We have to let our own inner sense kick in. And I don't think people do that. I think we as managers and owners, we listen too much to other people that we consider to be experts, me and you included. And the many things do work. Many things don't work, but we have to be our own person and make our own good time. And all the way back to the Maya Angelou quote from the beginning, it has to feel right. If we're like being a tough guy manager, for instance, and it doesn't feel right, it makes us a little sick inside, there's a problem with that. That's riding the horse in the wrong direction. And things have to feel right. Again, I know this sounds cornball to a lot of my colleagues, who say, you're the boss, just tell them which end is up. It doesn't work. And again, sorry to oversimplify, but people have to try it. They've got to keep trying things that feel right. The words that come out of our mouth really have to come out of our heart and our gut, basically. It's got to make sense to us. That's our inner sense.
Beautiful, Tim. And I'm sure listeners are seeing your book and maybe even thinking about they want to get in touch with you. How can they get in touch with you? How can they connect with you? Where can they find your book?
So stickypeopleproblems.com is my site, and would welcome anybody to sign up for my Sticky updates. Get it? Sticky updates. And the book is available wherever books are sold, including Amazon. And it's a challenging read, I will tell you. The formula in it is spot on, but it will help people immensely. And I would welcome any of your listeners, Divya, to connect with me. Happy to help anybody out. I really believe this stuff, and to help propagate the good word, as you mentioned.
Well, thank you so much, Tim, for sharing your wisdom with us and the knowledge. I'm sure people will learn a lot from it, and it will make their lives better, and it will also help them make other people's lives better. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And thank you, listeners, for being part of our family, because here's what I can tell you: without you, things would not be possible. The show would not be possible. You are the heart of the show. Reach out to us, share your stories. In any way we can serve and support you, do let us know, and we'll bring you the experts that can help you live the life you deserve and want. And thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible. Be well and take care until next time.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.